not effective at stopping other kinds of things. And a filter, everyone will also accept, has some level of effectiveness, some percentage of things it will catch. And people understand that once you get above a certain percentage of effectiveness, it becomes very difficult to get any higher than that. A shield, though, in order to be a good shield, has to stop everything. You can't stop like 99% of the arrows. It has to stop everything. Now, if people expect you to be a bug shield, an impenetrable bug shield, then you can't succeed. Now, the other thing is this idea of quality assurance versus testing. Now, quality assurance, I mean, if we take this word apart, and I don't like to get into these word games because I think that too many testers, they make themselves sound like beside the point nitpickers when they get all bound up about words. But some words have implications, and I think quality assurance is one of them. We can't really assure quality. Putting something on a scale doesn't change what it weighs. Similarly, running something through a set of tests does not change its quality. It simply measures it. It evaluates it. I think there's some danger in letting people get this sense that we're a quality assurance group if we can't actually affect the process upstream in ways that actually do assure quality. So the bottom line here is that if people have widely differing ideas about what your team can do, then you can't succeed. You just won't, because you're serving too many different masters. Or if everybody has the same idea about what your team can do and it sets the bar too high, like 100% defect detection effectiveness, as an example, then you can't succeed. So you need to, as I mentioned in my discussion about that chapter in Beautiful Testing, you need to have defined success criteria, defined metrics, and you need to measure against that, and if to the extent that you're not succeeding, improve, and to the extent that you are succeeding, make sure that people understand that if you're achieving the targets, then make sure that you make people aware of the fact that you are achieving your targets. Now, how do you do this? Well, basically, you need to work with your stakeholders to try to define your mission, and this is going to include a lot of very sensitive discussions, because you're going to need to try to finesse some things and make some bad expectations go away. And you could say, oh, that's going to be hard. Well, yeah, but it's going to be easier than having people labor under the disillusion or the misillusion that you're doing some particular thing, and then you're not. That ultimately is, you can ignore that for some amount of time, but it is a ticking bomb. As I've mentioned before, dissatisfied stakeholders have a way of making that dissatisfaction known. So define your mission and then figure out how you're going to actually succeed at achieving that mission, and measure that you do. Now, I mentioned quality assurance on the previous slide, and I want to follow up on that a little bit, because this is another thing that we see with clients, is this taking sole responsibility for quality. And one of the ways that you know that there's some sort of problem here is if uniformly the reaction to field failures is always, why did you guys miss that? Why did the test team miss that? If that's the reaction, as opposed to, wow, gee, it's just too bad that the developers put that bug in there, or it's too bad that we didn't capture that requirement, or it's too bad that we have this design problem. You should be concerned when there's this perception that no matter what happened upstream, the fact that we were at the very end of the process didn't catch anything, and that's our fault that thing is still there. That's a problem. That indicates a bad expectation that needs to be dealt with. Now, that expectation is sometimes our fault. And the reason I say that is I think you define a test team as quality assurance team, because it's called quality assurance, and then you don't have a clearly defined mission or goals or objectives with measurable performance indicators, success criteria for those goals, then what expectation does that phrase quality assurance set up? And there's a major disconnect between this measuring quality at the end versus assuring quality. As I said before, you're putting something on a scale doesn't change what it weighs. So you really have to be clear on this, that if the organization wants a quality assurance role, if it really wants that, as opposed to just saying, oh, we need QA, but really understanding with quality assurance, this is something that's involved early, and it drives the process from beginning to end with the goal of optimizing quality, within certain constraints, of course, but really driving process. Requirements reviews, design reviews, code reviews, static analysis of code, automated unit testing, continuous integration, some sort of stepwise component integration testing, all the way through prior to handed off to an independent test team. That's stuff that you'd have to drive if you wanted to be a quality assurance team. Now, maybe people don't want that. Maybe they go, oh, no, we don't want to put you to that much charge. Okay, that's cool. You can still do something extremely valuable at the end, which is determine the level of residual risk and let management decide. So, you transform yourself from being the owner of quality to being an assessor. And this does not conflict with what I was talking about before, about when you deliver bad news, deliver solutions too. Those are consistent. You can be an assessor, but not a disinterested one. I'm not saying be disinterested and pretend you don't care whether the project succeeds or fails. But saying, I'm going to focus on getting the best information about the residual level of quality risk at the end of the process. That's what I'm going to focus on. Then that's great, and everything else is a byproduct. Okay, because this ties into the next classic tester mistake, being an unappointed process cop, trying to make change happen in the process upstream without any authority. I'll give you an anecdote on this one because this is important, and it's an easy trap to fall into. Did a project for a client once in Paris, and we were there to help them build a unit testing framework, and so this is kind of tangential to the main thrust of our engagement. But I always like to, in an engagement like this, get a sense of who's who and what their needs are, and there was some possible reuse opportunities for this unit testing harness too in the system testing arena. So it made sense to do some amount of discussion about the relationship between development and test with the different parties. So I asked the director of development, I'll just call him Boris. I asked Boris, what do you think of the QA manager? And I'll call her Natasha. And we were in a conference room. The door was open. The guy got up and closed the conference room door, which is always a sign that you're about to hear something really interesting. He sat down. He looked at me. He said, Natasha is a narcissistic dilettante. And I didn't mean that as a compliment. And I said, oh, why is that? He said, well, she regularly goes into the development area. And the way they had like these open office layouts, so you have developers all sitting together in this big